The massive space station hung in the void like a metal flower, its petals stretching out in all directions. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its arms, their hulls gleaming under the light of 3 suns. This was Harmony Station, the heart of the Galactic Confederation, where over 200 species had maintained peace for 3,000 years. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the viewing port of the human ship Olive Branch, watching the station grow larger as they approached. Her hands were folded behind her back, and she wore the simple blue uniform that Earth had chosen for this historic moment. Behind her, the ship's crew worked quietly at their stations, preparing for humanity's first official meeting with the galaxy. "It's beautiful," said Captain Rodriguez, joining her at the window. "Hard to believe we're really here," Sarah nodded. After decades of watching alien signals from Earth, humans had finally built ships capable of reaching the stars. The journey to Harmony Station had taken 8 months, but it felt like humanity had been preparing for this moment for centuries. "Remember the protocols," Sarah said softly. "We're the newcomers here. We watch, we listen, and we show respect." The Olive Branch looked small next to the other ships docked at the station. Its white hull was clean and simple, with no obvious weapons or aggressive designs. The ship had been built specifically for this mission, to show the galaxy that humans came in peace. As they docked, Sarah felt her heart racing. Through the airlock came their first glimpse of alien life. The station's greeting committee was led by Ambassador Vexistar, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms. His species, the Aquilians, had been part of the Confederation for over 1,000 years. "Welcome, humans of Earth," Vexistar said, his voice translated by the universal communicators. "We are honored to meet a new star-traveling species." Sarah bowed slightly, a gesture she had practiced many times. "Thank you, Ambassador Vexistar. We are grateful for this opportunity to join the galactic community." The greeting ceremony took place in the station's main hall, a huge room with a dome that showed the stars outside. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered to see the newcomers. Sarah recognized some of them from the signals Earth had intercepted: the peaceful Keltharians with their golden fur, the insect-like Hivari who spoke in musical tones, and the crystalline beings called the Resonants. But she also noticed the ones who watched with less friendly eyes. The Craxi stood in one corner, their gray skin marked with scars and their red eyes fixed on the human delegation. They were known throughout the galaxy as warriors, always ready for a fight. Near them stood the Veil Syndicate representatives, tall and thin with pale skin, who controlled much of the galaxy's trade through methods that weren't always legal. "Humans are a young species," announced Vexistar to the gathered crowd. "They have achieved space travel in only a few thousand years since developing civilization. This shows great promise." A Craxi representative stepped forward. His name was War Leader Thakmor, and he was covered in battle scars. "Young species often think they are ready for the galaxy when they are not." "What can these humans offer the Confederation?" Sarah felt all eyes turned to her. This was the moment she had prepared for. "We offer friendship, knowledge, and a willingness to learn. Earth has many resources, and we hope to trade fairly with all species. We also bring our commitment to peace." Thakmor's laugh was harsh. "Peace? The galaxy is not a safe place for those who cannot defend themselves. We believe that intelligent beings can solve problems without violence," Sarah replied calmly. "That is why we are here, to join a community that has maintained peace for so long." A representative from the Veil Syndicate, Lady Sithara, glided forward. Her voice was smooth like silk, but her eyes were cold. "Peace is maintained through strength, little human. The weak serve the strong. That is the natural order." Sarah felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice steady. "We prefer cooperation to domination. We believe all species have value." "How charming," Sithara said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Such innocence. I wonder how long it will last." The ceremony continued with formal presentations from various species. The humans were offered what Vexistar called probationary membership in the Confederation. This meant they could trade and communicate with other species. But they had limited voting rights and would need to pay tribute to help maintain galactic peace. "The tribute is quite reasonable," Vexistar explained privately after the ceremony. "Only 30% of your annual resource production, plus use of your ships for Confederation missions when needed." Sarah nearly choked. 30% was enormous, but she maintained her diplomatic composure. "We appreciate the Confederation's generous offer. Earth will need time to consider the terms. Of course, Vextar said, but do not take too long. The galaxy can be dangerous for unprotected species. That evening, the human delegation was invited to a reception in their honor. Species from across the galaxy mingled in the station's great hall, sharing food and conversation. Sarah moved through the crowd, trying to learn as much as possible about galactic politics and culture. She noticed that many species seemed to have complex relationships. The Keltharians kept glancing nervously at the Craxi. The smaller species stayed far away from both the Craxi and the Veil Syndicate. Several ambassadors warned her quietly about the dangers of traveling alone in certain parts of the galaxy. "Your species seems very peaceful," said Ambassador Kelthara of the Keltharian Republic, her golden fur shimmering under the lights. "That is admirable, but also concerning. There are predators in the galaxy who see kindness as weakness. We've had our share of conflicts on Earth," Sarah admitted, "but we've learned that war brings only suffering. We prefer to find other solutions." "I hope your wisdom serves you well," Kelthara said sadly, "but be careful whom you trust." Later that night, Captain Rodriguez found Sarah in her quarters aboard the Olive Branch reviewing the day's events. "Thoughts?" he asked. "They're testing us," Sarah said. "The tribute demand, the veiled threats, the way some of them look at us like we're prey. They want to see how we'll react, and how will we react?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "With patience, with diplomacy, we'll show them that humans can be reasonable partners, even if they try to take advantage of us." "Especially then," Sarah said firmly. "We came here to prove that there's a better way than endless conflict. If we resort to threats and violence at the first sign of trouble, we're no better than the worst of them." Rodriguez nodded, but he looked worried. "I hope you're right, because from what I saw today, some of these species look like they eat diplomats for breakfast." Sarah turned back to her reports, but Rodriguez's words stayed with her. She had spent years preparing for this mission, studying everything humans knew about galactic politics and alien psychology, but theory was different from reality. The galaxy was full of predators who had grown comfortable with the idea that might made right, but humans had learned some hard lessons in their own history. They knew the cost of war, the price of hatred, and the value of patience. If the galaxy wanted to test that patience, Sarah was prepared to show them just how deep human resolve could run. Outside her window, the stars wheeled slowly in their ancient dance, indifferent to the small dramas of the species that crawled between them. But change was coming to the galaxy, whether it knew it or not. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be quite the same. 6 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Confederation as probationary members. Earth had started paying the tribute, sending precious metals and rare elements to Harmony Station every month. Human ships carried Confederation cargo across the galaxy, and Earth scientists shared their research with alien colleagues. But the attacks had begun. Captain James Walsh stood on the bridge of the cargo ship Peaceful Trader, watching the wreckage of what had been the merchant vessel Golden Hope drift past his view screen. The ship had been carrying medical supplies to the human colony on Kepler 438b when it was destroyed 3 days ago. "Any survivors?" Walsh asked his communications officer. "None, sir. The blast took out the entire crew section first. 23 people, including 6 civilians." Walsh clenched his fists but kept his voice steady. "Send our report to Earth and continue to the colony. They need those supplies." The official Craxi response had been swift and apologetic. War leader Thakmore himself had sent a message expressing regret over the navigation error that had caused a Craxi patrol ship to fire on the human vessel. It was, he claimed, a terrible accident caused by faulty sensor readings that had identified the cargo ship as a pirate vessel. Ambassador Sarah Chen had filed a formal complaint with the Confederation Council, requesting a full investigation. The response had been exactly what she expected. A committee would be formed to study the incident. Findings would be available in 6 to 8 months, and the Craxi Empire would implement new training procedures to prevent future misunderstandings. Meanwhile, the attacks continued. The colony on Ross 128b reported that pirates had raided their mining facilities, stealing equipment and taking 12 colonists as slaves. The attackers had used ships with Veil Syndicate markings, but Lady Sithara claimed they were rogue elements operating without official sanction. She promised to investigate, but weeks passed with no results. 3 more cargo, Ships were lost to navigation errors and sensor malfunctions. 2. Human research stations were hit by pirates, who seemed to know exactly where to find the most valuable equipment. A passenger liner carrying families to the new colony on Wolf 359 was attacked by unknown raiders who killed 30 people before fleeing when a Confederation patrol ship finally arrived hours later. Each incident followed the same pattern. Humans died or disappeared. The responsible parties expressed regret and promised investigations. The Confederation Council offered condolences and suggestions for better security measures. Nothing else happened. Sarah Chen sat in her office aboard Harmony Station reviewing the latest report. The numbers were getting harder to ignore. In 6 months, humans had lost over 200 lives, 12 ships and equipment worth millions of credits. The attacks were escalating in both frequency and boldness. A soft chime announced a visitor. Ambassador Kelthera of the Keltharian Republic entered. Her golden fur dimmed with worry. "Sarah, I wanted to speak with you privately," Kelthera said, taking a seat across from the human ambassador. "I appreciate the visit," Sarah replied, "though I suspect I know what you want to discuss." "The attacks on your people are not random," Kelthera said quietly. "The Craxi and the Veil Syndicate are testing you. They want to see how far they can push before you push back. We've filed formal complaints through all the proper channels," Sarah said. "We're following Confederation law." "The law works when all parties respect it," Kelthera replied sadly. "But some species only understand strength. They see your restraint as weakness, and weakness invites more aggression." Sarah leaned back in her chair. "What would you have us do? Start a war? Attack their ships in revenge? That's exactly what they want. An excuse to claim we're the aggressors." "I don't know," Kelthera admitted, "but I fear for your people. The attacks are getting worse, and the Council will do nothing to stop them. Too many members profit from the current system." After Kelthera left, Sarah called an emergency meeting with Captain Rodriguez and the other senior members of the human diplomatic mission. They gathered in the secure conference room aboard the Olive Branch, which was one of the few places they could speak freely without worrying about alien surveillance. "The situation is deteriorating rapidly," Sarah began, activating a holographic display that showed the attacks plotted on a galactic map. 12 incidents in the past month alone. "It's not random," said Intelligence Officer Commander Lisa Park. "The targets are specifically chosen to cause maximum economic and psychological damage while staying just below the threshold that would trigger a Confederation response. They're testing our limits," added Captain Rodriguez. "Seeing how much we'll take before we break. Earth Command is getting pressured to respond," Sarah said. "The families of the victims want justice. The media is asking why we're not protecting our own people. Some politicians are calling for withdrawal from the Confederation entirely." "What are our options?" asked Dr. Michael Torres, the mission's cultural specialist. Sarah pulled up another display. "We can continue filing complaints and hoping the system works. We can withdraw from the Confederation and risk being attacked openly rather than through accidents and pirates. Or," she paused, letting the implication hang in the air, "or we show them that human patience has limits," Commander Park finished. "That's exactly what they want," Dr. Torres protested. "The moment we respond with force, they'll claim we're the aggressors. The entire Confederation will turn against us." "Some of them already have," Rodriguez pointed out. "The Craxi and Veil Syndicate aren't hiding their contempt anymore. Half the council members are either scared of them or profiting from their actions." Sarah stood and walked to the view screen, looking out at the vast space station that represented galactic civilization. "There's something else. Our intelligence suggests the attacks are coordinated. The Craxi and Veil Syndicate are working together, sharing information about our ship movements and colony locations." "How is that possible?" Dr. Torres asked. "Those two species hate each other. They hate each other less than they apparently hate the idea of humans becoming a real power in the galaxy," Commander Park replied. "A new species that refuses to play by their rules is a threat to the established order." The meeting was interrupted by an urgent communication from Earth. "Admiral." Janet Harrison appeared on the holographic display, her face grim. "Sarah, we've just received word of another attack. The colony ship New Horizon was destroyed while carrying 800 settlers to establish a new human world." There were no survivors. The room fell silent. 800 people, including families with children, wiped out in a single attack. The Craxi are claiming another navigation error, Admiral Harrison continued. They say their patrol ship mistook the colony ship for a hostile vessel. But our intelligence suggests it was a deliberate ambush. What are Earth's orders? Sarah asked quietly. For now, continue diplomatic efforts. But Sarah, the President has authorized me to tell you that if these attacks don't stop soon, we'll have no choice but to consider other options. After the communication ended, the human diplomatic team sat in heavy silence. Finally, Captain Rodriguez spoke. How many more have to die before we accept that diplomacy isn't working? Sarah didn't answer immediately. She thought about the 800 souls who had died believing they were traveling to a new life among the stars. She thought about the families torn apart by pirate raids and the cargo ship crews who had died doing their jobs. She thought about the promises humanity had made about finding a better way. We give it one more try, she said finally. A formal presentation to the full Confederation Council. We lay out all the evidence, demand action, and give them a chance to prove that the system can work. And if they refuse? Commander Park asked. Sarah's voice was quiet but steady. Then we show them that human courtesy was a choice, not a weakness. And choices can be changed. Outside the view screen, alien ships moved through space, their crews confident in the established order of galactic civilization. But something was shifting in the darkness between the stars, like a sleeping giant beginning to stir. The galaxy had grown comfortable with its rules, its hierarchies, and its assumptions about how new species should behave. It was about to learn that some assumptions could be very dangerous. The emergency session of the Galactic Confederation Council had been requested under Article Sir 47 of the Galactic Charter, provision that allowed any member species to demand immediate attention for matters threatening galactic peace and stability. It had been used only 12 times in 3,000 years. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the corridors of Harmony Station toward the council chamber, her footsteps echoing in the vast halls. Behind her, Commander Park carried a secure datapad containing 18 months of evidence. Word of the emergency session had spread quickly, and representatives from over 100 species had arrived to witness what many expected to be an entertaining display of human frustration. The council chamber was packed. The circular room had seating for 200 delegates, with additional viewing galleries for observers and media. At the center sat the High Council, 5 species that had founded the Confederation 3 millennia ago. Ambassador Vextar of the Aquilians served as the current council president. The emergency session is now called to order, Vextar announced, his forearms gesturing formally. Ambassador Chen of the Human Republic has requested this gathering to address what she terms systematic aggression threatening galactic peace. The floor is yours. Ambassador, Sarah walked to the central podium, very aware of the hundreds of eyes watching her. In the front rows, she could see war leader Thakmor of the Craxi Empire, his scarred face showing barely concealed amusement. Lady Sithara of the Veil Syndicate sat nearby, her pale features arranged in the expression of polite interest that didn't hide the coldness in her eyes. But Sarah also saw friendlier faces. Ambassador Kelthara of the Keltharian Republic watched with concern and support. Several smaller species looked genuinely interested in what humanity had to say. Even among the larger powers, some delegates seemed uncomfortable with the recent pattern of attacks. Honored delegates, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. 18 months ago, humanity was welcomed into this body as probationary members. We came here with hope that we could join a community of civilized species committed to peace and mutual prosperity. She paused, letting her eyes sweep across the chamber. That hope has been severely tested. Since joining the Confederation, human vessels and colonies have suffered 27 separate attacks resulting in over 1,200 deaths and massive economic losses. Each attack has been dismissed as an accident, a misunderstanding, or the work of pirates beyond official control. War leader Thakmor stood up. The Craxi Empire has explained our regrettable navigation errors and expressed appropriate condolences. What more would the humans have us do? Explain how your navigation errors always seem to result in the complete destruction of our cargo sections, while leaving your targeting computers perfectly functional, Sarah replied coldly. Explain how pirates using Veil Syndicate ships always know exactly when and where our vessels will be traveling, through supposedly secure space. A murmur ran through the chamber. Lady Sithara rose gracefully. The human delegate makes serious accusations without proof. Pirates often use stolen or copied ship designs. The Veil Syndicate cannot be held responsible for every criminal who mimics our technology. Sarah nodded to Commander Park, who activated the central holographic display. A three-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared, with red dots marking each attack on human interests. This is the pattern of attacks over the past 18 months, Sarah said. Note the precision timing, the specific targeting of our most valuable shipments, and the coordinated nature of the strikes. This is not random piracy or navigation errors. This is systematic predation. The display zoomed in on specific incidents, showing ship movement patterns, communication intercepts, and tactical analyses. The evidence was overwhelming. The attacks were too precise, too well-informed, and too coordinated to be coincidental. Furthermore, Sarah continued, our intelligence has identified clear communication links between Craxi military units and Veil Syndicate vessels immediately before several attacks. Ships that supposedly don't work together somehow seem to share real-time tactical information. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several Craxi delegates shouted accusations of espionage and data fabrication. Veil Syndicate representatives demanded to know how humans had obtained classified communications. Vextar called for order, but Sarah raised her voice above the noise. The most recent attack destroyed the colony ship New Horizon with 800 souls aboard, including 300 children under the age of 15. The Craxi claim another navigation error, but our evidence shows the attack was carefully planned and executed with military precision. The chamber fell silent. Even among species that regularly engaged in conflict, the deliberate targeting of civilian colonists, especially children, was considered deeply dishonorable. What exactly are you asking for, Ambassador Chen? Asked Council Member Zexlar of the Ancient Hegemony, one of the founding species. Sarah's voice remained steady, but something in her tone made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. For 18 months, humanity has demonstrated our commitment to peaceful coexistence. We have absorbed losses, endured insults, and maintained our belief that reasonable beings could resolve conflicts through dialogue. We have been courteous. She paused, and the word courteous seemed to hang in the air with unexpected weight. The destruction of New Horizon crossed a line. 1,200 deaths, including hundreds of children, because certain members of this confederation believe our restraint indicates weakness. This is humanity's final attempt at diplomatic resolution. Sarah activated another display and the chamber gasped. The hologram showed detailed military intelligence on Craxi fleet movements, Veil Syndicate base locations, and operational plans that no primitive species should have been able to gather. Ship specifications, personnel records, communication codes, information that suggested human intelligence capabilities far beyond what anyone had suspected. How did you obtain this information? War Leader Thakmor demanded, his earlier amusement replaced by genuine concern. The same way we've been tracking every hostile action against human interest for the past 18 months, Sarah replied. We are not the naive newcomers you believed us to be. Lady Sithara's composure cracked slightly. This is impossible. Our security protocols are adequate against most species, Sarah interrupted. But humanity spent 10,000 years learning to spy on, infiltrate, and outwit each other. We became very good at gathering information without being detected. She walked closer to the front rows, her eyes fixing on Thakmor and Sithara. End your attacks, or our courtesy ends here. The simple statement sent a chill through the chamber. There was something in Sarah's voice, not a threat exactly, but a promise. The diplomatic mask that humanity had worn for 18 months was slipping, revealing something harder underneath. You dare threaten the Craxi Empire? Thakmor roared, rising to his full imposing height. Your tiny species has no military capability worth mentioning. Your ships are cargo haulers and exploration vessels. Sarah smiled, and several delegates later said it was the most unsettling expression they had ever seen on a human face. War Leader Thakmor, you have observed human vessels for 18 months, but you have never asked yourself a very important question. Why does a species that claims to be peaceful build ships with such robust hulls, such sophisticated sensors, and such powerful engines? What does a cargo hauler need with military-grade navigation computers and communication arrays that can pierce any jamming system? The chamber was dead silent now, Even the media representatives had stopped their whispered commentary. "You have 72 hours to consider our position," Sarah said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "During that time, we strongly advise that all attacks on human interests cease immediately. We also suggest that member species review their intelligence estimates regarding human capabilities." She turned to address the full council. Humanity came to the stars hoping to find a better way than the endless cycle of conflict that marked our species' development. "We chose courtesy because we believed we could build something greater than a system based on predation and intimidation. We still hope for that future." Sarah's eyes swept the chamber one final time. "But hope requires good faith from all parties. The choice of what happens next is no longer ours alone." She walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a room full of delegates who were suddenly re-evaluating everything they thought they knew about the polite newcomers from Earth. In her wake, urgent communications began flying across the galaxy. Intelligence services scrambled to reassess human capabilities. Military commanders reviewed their estimates of human ship designs. Political leaders began calculating the implications of having seriously underestimated a new galactic power. The 72-hour countdown had begun, and for the first time in 3,000 years, the established order of galactic civilization was about to face a challenge it had never encountered before, a species that had chosen to be peaceful, but had never chosen to be weak. The 72 hours passed with mockery and escalation. War leader Thakmor had responded to humanity's ultimatum by broadcasting a message across the galaxy, declaring that the Craxi Empire would not be intimidated by a species of merchants and farmers who think intelligence gathering makes them warriors. To prove his point, he ordered a full assault on the human colony of Kepler 442b, sending 3 battle cruisers and a dozen support vessels against what intelligence reported was a lightly defended agricultural world. Lady Sithara was more subtle, but equally dismissive. Veil Syndicate raiders launched simultaneous attacks on human shipping lanes throughout the Outer Rim, hitting 5 cargo convoys in a single day. When questioned by Confederation authorities, she simply smiled and blamed increased pirate activity in response to human intelligence operations that destabilized local security. Other species watched nervously as the crisis escalated. Some, like the Keltharians, sent private messages to Earth urging restraint and offering to mediate. Others quietly began moving their own ships away from human territories, unsure what was coming but certain they didn't want to be caught in the middle. At Harmony Station, Ambassador Sarah Chen received hourly updates from Earth Command. The reports were grim. Human colonies under siege, cargo ships burning in space, and over 300 more civilians dead in the past 3 days. The pressure from Earth was enormous. Politicians demanded immediate military response. Families of the victims called for justice. Media commentators questioned whether diplomatic solutions had failed entirely. But Sarah also received other reports that never made it to the public communications channels. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of what the galaxy knew as the cargo hauler Peaceful Trader, watching the tactical displays show Craxi battle cruisers approaching Kepler 442b. The enemy ships were massive, bristling with weapons and armor that had conquered dozens of worlds over the centuries. They approached the human colony with the confidence of predators who had never encountered real resistance. "Range to target?" Webb asked quietly. 15 million kilometers and closing, reported his tactical officer. "Their sensors are active, but they're not detecting us." "Stealth systems?" "Operating at full efficiency. As far as they know, we're still a simple cargo vessel on a routine supply run." Webb nodded. For 18 months, human ships had moved through the galaxy disguised as exactly what they appeared to be: peaceful merchants and explorers. But the Craxi were about to learn that appearances could be very deceiving. "Signal the fleet," Webb ordered. "Execute Protocol 7. Across human space, 24 ships that had been cataloged as cargo haulers, research vessels, and passenger liners began to transform. Hull plates slid back to reveal weapon systems that had never appeared on any galactic registry. Sensor arrays that had been explained as enhanced navigation equipment, powered up to full military specifications. Engines that had seemed adequate for civilian purposes suddenly displayed thrust capabilities that defied previous estimates of human technology. The Peaceful Trader itself underwent the most dramatic change. its modest cargo ship exterior reconfigured to reveal a vessel that dwarfed most Confederation dreadnoughts. Weapons systems that incorporated technology the galaxy had never seen before emerged from hidden compartments. The ship's true nature was finally revealed. It was humanity's flagship, built with the accumulated knowledge of a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of war. Craxi fleet has reached attack range of the colony, the tactical officer reported. They're launching bombardment torpedoes. Intercept, Webb ordered calmly. The human fleet appeared on Craxi sensors like ghosts materializing from another dimension. One moment the colony seemed defenseless, the next it was protected by ships that shouldn't exist. The bombardment torpedoes, massive weapons capable of cracking planetary shields, were intercepted by defensive systems that turned them into harmless light shows. War leader. Thakmor stared at his tactical display in shock. What are those ships? Where did they come from? Unknown design, unknown capabilities, his sensor operator reported. Sir, their weapons signatures are unlike anything in our databases. All ships open fire. Thakmor roared. Destroy them. The Craxi battlecruisers unleashed their full firepower, enough destructive force to level a city. Energy beams and missile swarms converged on the human ships, weapons that had broken the defenses of countless enemies. The human shields absorbed the attack without even flickering. Impressive, Webb commented, watching the display. Their weapons are more powerful than our intelligence suggested. Note that for the tactical databases. Orders, sir? Webb was quiet for a moment, thinking about the 300 civilians who had died in the past 3 days, the 1,200 who had died over the past 18 months, and the 800 souls aboard New Horizon who would never see their new home among the stars. Disable their weapons and engines. Leave life support intact. Offer surrender terms after they've had time to consider their situation. The human response was surgical in its precision. Energy beams that seemed to bend space itself reached out and touched specific points on each Craxi ship. Weapon systems simply stopped working. Engine cores shut down safely, leaving the vessels drifting but intact. Communication arrays were left functioning so the crews could call for help and report what had happened. In 15 minutes, the entire Craxi assault fleet was helpless. Not a single enemy crew member had been killed, but their ships were as defenseless as newborns. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Veil Syndicate raiders found themselves facing human vessels that had appeared from nowhere. Their sophisticated cloaking systems and military-grade weapons no match for technology that seemed to operate on principles they didn't understand. Pirate bases that had been hidden for decades were located and neutralized with frightening efficiency. The response was swift, calculated, and completely unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen from a military force. Human ships disabled rather than destroyed when possible, targeted military installations while carefully avoiding civilian casualties, and offered surrender terms even in the midst of battle. But it was the scope of the operation that truly shocked Galactic Intelligence Services. Human forces seemed to be everywhere at once, striking with precision that suggested they had been planning these operations for months or even years. Ships that had been dismissed as civilian vessels revealed themselves to be advanced military platforms. Colonies that seemed defenseless turned out to have hidden defensive systems that could repel full-scale invasions. Admiral Webb opened a communication channel to the disabled Craxi fleet. War leader. Thakmor's face appeared on the screen, his earlier arrogance replaced by confusion and growing fear. I am Admiral Marcus Webb of the Human Defense Fleet, Webb said calmly. Your ships have been disabled but not destroyed. Your crews are unharmed. You have attacked sovereign human territory and killed our civilians. However, we prefer to resolve conflicts through discussion rather than destruction. Impossible, Thakmor said. Your species has no military capability. You're merchants and farmers. We were merchants and farmers, Webb replied. But humanity spent 10,000 years learning to build weapons that could crack planets and tactics that could outwit any enemy. We became very, very good at warfare. We also learned the terrible cost of such knowledge. He paused, letting that sink in. The question now is whether the galaxy wants to learn those same lessons. We sincerely hope not. Webb switched to a galaxy-wide broadcast addressing not just the Craxi, but every species that was monitoring the situation. This is Admiral Marcus Webb, speaking for humanity. For 18 months we have endured attacks on our people, while pursuing diplomatic solutions. We chose restraint because we hoped to find something better than the cycle of violence that defined our species' past. We demonstrated courtesy because we believed intelligent beings could build a civilization based on cooperation rather than predation. The broadcast was being received on thousands of worlds, watched by billions of beings who were seeing their assumptions about galactic power structures crumble in real time. Today, that courtesy was met with an escalated assault on our civilians, including children. We have responded proportionally, disabling military assets while preserving life wherever possible. We could have chosen to demonstrate our full capabilities, but we still believe in the possibility of a better way. Webb's voice hardened slightly. However, let there be no mistake about our resolve. Any further attacks on human interests will be met with an appropriate response. We have shown our enemies mercy today in hopes that wisdom will prevail over aggression. That mercy should not be mistaken for weakness. The broadcast ended, leaving the galaxy to absorb what had just happened. Within hours, emergency sessions were being called in dozens of government chambers. Intelligence services were frantically revising their estimates of human capabilities. Military commanders were reviewing tactical doctrines that had been built on assumptions that no longer held true. On Harmony Station, Ambassador Sarah Chen watched the reports flowing in from across the galaxy. The attacks on human interests had stopped completely. Not a single hostile action had been reported in the past 6 hours. 3 months after what galactic historians would later call the 72-hour revolution, Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the corridors of Harmony Station and marveled at how much had changed. The same aliens who had once looked at humans with condescension or predatory interest now offered respectful nods and genuine smiles. Species that had never acknowledged human presence before stepped aside politely and wished her well in their travels. The Galactic Confederation had not collapsed, as some had predicted, but it had transformed dramatically. The revelation of humanity's true capabilities had shattered the established power structure and forced every species to reconsider their place in the galactic community. In her private office, Sarah reviewed the latest diplomatic reports while sipping tea from Earth. The changes were remarkable and far-reaching. The Craxi Empire had formally apologized for their attacks and paid reparations for human losses. War leader Thakmor had been replaced by a more moderate commander who spoke seriously about honor and the proper treatment of civilian populations. The Veil Syndicate had undergone an even more dramatic transformation. Lady Sithara's government had fallen within weeks of the human military demonstration, replaced by reformists who promised to end the systematic piracy and slave trading that had made their species feared throughout the galaxy. The new syndicate leadership had even requested human advisors to help them transition to legitimate trade practices. But perhaps the most significant change was in the smaller species, those who had lived in fear of the larger powers for centuries. Ambassador Kelthera of the Keltharian Republic had sent a private message expressing gratitude for what she called the first time in generations that my people can travel freely without fear of predation. A soft chime announced a visitor. Sarah looked up to see Admiral Marcus Webb entering her office, still wearing the simple uniform he preferred over the elaborate dress codes favored by other galactic military leaders. Marcus, how are the integration meetings going? Sarah asked, gesturing for him to take a seat. Better than expected, Webb replied. 17 species have requested human military advisors, and 12 want to upgrade their defense systems with our technology. The Keltharians are particularly interested in our non-lethal ship disabling systems. And the resistance? Minimal. The few species that openly opposed our methods have found themselves very isolated. Turns out most of the galaxy was tired of living under the threat of constant aggression. They just didn't think there was an alternative. Sarah nodded. The transformation hadn't been without its challenges. Some species had initially denounced human actions as unprovoked aggression and technological tyranny, but their voices had been drowned out by the relief expressed by dozens of smaller civilizations who suddenly found themselves free from centuries of intimidation. There's something else, Webb said, his expression becoming more serious. The investigation into human activities during our probationary period is complete. Some of the council members are concerned about the extent of our intelligence operations. Sarah wasn't surprised. The revelation that humans had been monitoring galactic communications for decades before making official contact had shocked many species. The discovery that human cargo ships had been mapping military installations and recording fleet movements, while appearing to conduct routine trade, had caused several diplomatic incidents. How concerned? Sarah asked. Concerned enough to demand a full briefing on our surveillance capabilities. They want to know exactly how much we've been watching and what we plan to do with the information. Before Sarah could respond, her communication console activated, displaying the image of Ambassador Vextar. The Aquilian looked older than when Sarah had first met him 18 months ago, and considerably more humble. Ambassador Chen, I apologize for the interruption, but the High Council has requested your immediate presence for an emergency session. What's the nature of the emergency? Sarah asked. The hegemony probe has returned, Vextar said, his forearms gesturing with obvious agitation. It carries information that complicates our understanding of galactic history. Sarah and Webb exchanged glances. The hegemony probe was a legendary automated exploration vessel launched by the ancient hegemony over 5,000 years ago to explore the galaxy's outer rim. It had been presumed lost centuries ago. An hour later, Sarah sat in the High Council chamber alongside representatives from the 5 founding species of the Confederation. The probe's data crystals had been analyzed, and the results were troubling. Council member Zexlar of the ancient hegemony spoke first, his crystalline form flickering with patterns that indicated deep concern. The probe discovered evidence of a hostile force operating beyond the galactic rim. Ships of unknown design, technology that appears to dwarf even our most advanced systems, and indications of an expanding empire that has already consumed several small galaxies. The chamber was silent as the implications sank in. The Galactic Confederation had enjoyed 3,000 years of relative peace, partly because they were the dominant civilization in their region of space. The discovery of a potentially hostile external force changed everything. How long before they reach Confederation space? Sarah asked. The probe's data suggests they are still thousands of years away, replied another council member. But their expansion rate is accelerating, and their technology appears to advance rapidly through conquest and assimilation of other civilizations. Webb leaned forward. You're telling us about this because you want humanity's help. The thought had occurred to us, Vextar admitted. Your species has demonstrated capabilities that exceed our previous understanding of what was possible. Your military technology, your strategic thinking, your ability to coordinate complex operations across vast distances. These are exactly the qualities that might be needed to defend our galaxy. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, considering the implications. Just months ago, these same beings had been treating humanity as naive newcomers suitable only for exploitation. Now they were asking for protection against a threat that terrified civilizations thousands of years older than human civilization. What exactly are you proposing? She asked. Full membership in the Confederation with equal voting rights, said Council Member Yathara of the Ethereal Collective. Access to all galactic resources and technology. Joint command structure for galaxy defense and, she paused, recognition of humanity as the primary military authority for external threats. It was an offer that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Complete equality and acknowledgement of human military supremacy. But Sarah could see the fear in their eyes. The galaxy's oldest civilizations had built their power on the assumption that they were the apex predators in this region of space. The discovery that something much worse might be coming had shattered that assumption. There's something you should know, Sarah said finally. Humanity has been aware of the external threat for several years. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Sarah raised her hand for silence and continued. Our deep space monitoring systems detected the expansion pattern before we made official contact with the Confederation. The threat was one of the factors that influenced our decision to seek galactic allies rather than remaining isolated on Earth. You knew? Vextar said, his voice barely above a whisper. You knew about the threat and you still chose to pursue peaceful integration rather than immediate military alliance. We chose to try building the kind of civilization that would be worth defending, Sarah replied. A galaxy united by mutual respect and cooperation rather than fear and domination. We believed that such a civilization would be stronger and more resilient than one held together only by the threat of external enemies. Webb nodded. The enemy beyond the rim conquers through division and fear. They turn species against each other, exploit existing conflicts, and absorb the fragments. A galaxy already at war with itself would be easy prey. Sarah stood and walked to the chamber's great window, looking out at the stars. Humanity accepts your offer of full membership and equal partnership, but we have conditions. Name them, Zexlar said immediately. First, the tribute system ends completely. All species contribute to galactic defense according to their abilities, not according to their perceived weakness. Second, the predatory practices that some species have used against others stop immediately. We're building a civilization worth defending, and that means protecting all member species from internal as well as external threats. She turned back to face the council. Third, this partnership is voluntary. Any species that prefers to face the future alone is free to leave, but those who stay commit to treating all other members as equals, regardless of military power or technological advancement. The council members looked at each other, communicating through methods human science was still learning to understand. Finally, Vextar spoke for all of them. Agreed. Welcome to full membership in the Galactic Confederation, Ambassador Chen. What are your recommendations for our defense preparations? Sarah smiled, but there was steel beneath the expression. We start by building the kind of galaxy that our children, all our children of every species, will want to inherit. And then we prepare to defend it with everything we have.